There is personal satisfaction of coming to understand ecosystems better because you're out there. You're listening to what the fish are trying to tell you, what nature's trying to tell you. You've got to sit there and quietly observe what is going on, to simply record what you see, to photograph what you see, to provide those photographs for other people to see, so that we can all better understand the conversation that fish are trying to provide to us through the only means they have. The spawning activity of their lives is how they perpetuate themselves. And it is simply the most important thing that we could come to understand.
One of the things that I feel really blessed about growing up with my dad was that he just instilled this curiosity in me to better understand nature. I can remember a couple of examples vividly where my dad introduced me to various aspects of salmon and steelhead, their life cycle, their ecology, that stuck with me. And one of my very earliest memories, we were sitting along a riverbank on the Washougal River, and we were watching the salmon spawn. It felt really cool as a kid because it feels like you're spying on nature and they don't know, right? It's like you're in this little place, you're kind of hidden from view. And ever since then, I've had this interest in spawning fish because that's a time in their life cycle when you can actually see the fish without being underwater. You can walk along the riverbank, you can see the fish out there actively trying to breed and mate and dig their red in the river channel. That's kind of where my interest in conducting spawning surveys stemmed from, was that early experience. We kind of connected all that back together as I got to be a teenager by conducting snorkel surveys and red counts to help the local agency staff determine how many adult steelhead were in the Washougal River. Sometimes you don't have to catch the fish or even fish for them to find joy in being around them, because you learn so much about them by getting into the water.
Here the active steelhead spawning is still occurring. I've been watching now for about 10 minutes, and it's just a continual activity of the males. Working back and forth. I began steelhead fishing in 1955 when I was 11 to 12 years old on the Washougal River down in southwest Washington. When I initially began to fish, I fished for salmon and steelhead that were all wild. It was obvious to me by the time I moved in 1996 that great changes had occurred in the wild steelhead of the Washougal River. Over time, small one-salt steelhead began to gradually disappear because of hatchery-wild spawning interactions, and also because of recreational fishing pressure for which catch and release was not implemented until 1986. Same thing occurred to the salmon. The coho, the wild coho, virtually disappeared. So my experience on the Washougal River was that of a definite feeling of loss and of inability to recover what once was, because the natural characteristics were no longer there for nature to select for. As a young man, I decided I wanted to be a fisheries biologist. I didn't know exactly what a fisheries biologist does, and in fact, I wanted to be around fish. And I began to realize you don't need to college. You can be a biologist. It's just that you won't be employed. And so in 1975, I started a fly fishing conservation club in southwest Washington called the Clark-Skamania Fly Fishers. And in 1979, we started to do spawning surveys on the Washougal River, Wind River, and the East Fork Lewis River. And in 1983, we initiated snorkel surveys. So that's where I began doing volunteer, independent field biology work. And it's been part of my life ever since. We can expect we might have missed some reds, but Here, there was a short period of high flows compared to Finney. Just below the falls. These are large steelhead. Males 15, 16 pounds. Female about 12. There's a smaller male down here. And there is also a much smaller male that's probably a resident. Here comes the other male coming up, the one that's a secondary male that is probably 8, 9, 10 pounds. There's the smaller one, and there the female's digging. The smaller one is probably a resident, and it's about 16 to 18 inches long. But this is it's a very active red, and the big male is trying to chase off both the small resident as well as the secondary male. When I came to the Skagit, it seemed refreshing. It seemed as though, yeah, it wasn't what it historically was, but the first year or two, the returns kind of excited me to get back into steelhead fishing once again and into even salmon fishing once again. But that quickly changed. And by the third year I was here, there was a dramatic loss, a dramatic reduction in wild winter steelhead. The realization that the Skagit is seemingly healthy with cold water temperatures for fish in the main stem river and a lot of area in the main stem river. And with large wild salmon populations, we're still spawning in the wild. The Skagit was on track to become another Washougal River. Altogether, there's 9 creeks that I've surveyed off and on over the years here in the mid-Skagit River, doing 100 to over 200 spawning surveys a year. Each of these creeks has such different characteristics, it would be probable that steelhead would react to these differences in the creeks with spawn timing. 2 of the creeks are intermittent each year. When you've got creeks that go dry, they require early spawning, which means that they have to have spawn timing, not unlike the Chambers Creek steelhead. They begin spawning in January, and they cease spawning after mid-March, so that when those little guys come up out of the gravel from their eggs, that they can move downstream to the Skagit, in which there is a great deal of habitat for rearing juvenile steelhead. More and more of those creeks are going to begin to go intermittent as climate change progresses. So it's vitally important that we've got streams that tell us that steelhead can indeed effectively adapt, as shown by Savage and Dry Creeks in particular in the mid-Skagit. I'm 77 years old, and the past year I realized that I can no longer continue the surveys with the same effectiveness as what I previously did. I've just felt very lucky that I found a fellow in Bellingham, Scott Willison, who expressed considerable interest in working with me to transition the surveys over to him.
What are your thoughts on this here? It's tough to tell. It's just at that point where...
Yeah, another one down there. It's so hard to so much high flow.
For as exciting and adrenaline fueled as it is to hook and play a steelhead, to me there's something even more unique about wandering off up into the hills on some creek somewhere, week after week, and one day you stumble across a spawning pair of steelhead. That's a really intimate experience and connection with fish that I can have. And the best part of it is I'm not having an adverse effect project. I'm collecting data that can be useful in assessing the run size or the health of a particular ecosystem. It's one way that I can give back. Seeing steelhead doing their thing in the wild, it's just such a fascinating thing to see.
There the female was digging, trying to cover up her eggs again. This is a relatively large female. It's about 13 or 14 pounds in this small creek. She might even be 15 pounds. Oh, there she is digging again. This is always exciting to watch and is the real payoff for doing spawning surveys.
Bill has put so much into collecting the survey data for so many years now. There's a lot of value in information that spans that breadth of time. 47.2? It gains, I think, a lot more statistical significance the longer it goes, to where you can actually start to see trends and compare years to other years. I didn't want to see that go away.
It's hard to convey the satisfaction in realizing that 13 years of prior data will not end, that this will continue for some unlimited period of time, and these wild steelhead will continue to be monitored. They will continue to tell a story. The fact that there's people who can appreciate fish by watching them and not fishing for them. You don't have to be a fisherman to enjoy fish any more than a bird watcher has to be a hunter. It's incredible, the level of interest and the monitoring help that the general public can provide. Very small, dark colored fish that appears to be a resident, and it's probably only 7 or 8 inches long, and is the only mate that I can see with this female. So this is a case of how important smaller juveniles can be.
One of the things that I think my dad has really helped with here in the Pacific Northwest is trying to get anglers into also not just being a conservationist, but to think about the science and the ways that we can kind of do what we might call citizen science. And also doing it in a way that was constructive, right? That provided information that would be helpful to other people.
I love the way Bill wrote. I love the way he looked at the natural world around us. And, he's such a big part of the history of Northwest steelheading. To me, it's kind of in the same vein as people like John Muir and Aldo Leopold. I hope to be able to do it for as many years as Bill has. That'd be a lot of data.
Look what's happened with bird watching. There's people all over the planet who enjoy helping to monitor and to tag migratory bird populations. The same thing can happen with fish. In fact, there's two. There's 2 of these little males and this female. And they are her spawning partners. Not only that, but this is a very untypical spawning reach in which a steelhead is using pocket water at the edge of rapids and effectively using this section for her spawning. That oftentimes is not considered to be a steelhead spawning area. So the female has found a slight pocket. There she is digging her red. She's found a slight pocket in among this fast water to build a red. If it hadn't been for this active spawning, I would never have seen this red. I never would have counted it. So typically in small streams like this, this often probably occurs, and a lot of reds are missed because of steelhead using this type of habitat for spawning, which is almost impossible to see the reds unless you see active spawning activity occurring.